The Dallas Stars and Minnesota Wild are set to play in Game 2 of their first round series tonight at the American Airlines Center. And on today's episode, we'll be talking about how the Dallas Stars can even the series without Joe Pavelski and what they need to do in order to leave Dallas with one win headed into Game 3. All of this and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on this Wednesday, April 19th. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener of the show, thank you for stopping by, making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. Do appreciate all of you everydayers out there. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or follow us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We're always free and available no matter where or how you choose to listen. And the Stars are back at it tonight, looking to even this first round series against the Minnesota Wild. And they will be looking to do so in Game 2, likely without Joe Pavelski in the lineup. After that unnecessary hit from Matt Dumba in the second period of Monday night's game, it's a big blow for the Stars, both on and off the ice. Pavelski, an incredible leader in all aspects of the game, an incredible teammate, and I just don't really know if he's going to be back this series. The things I see on social media, the reports indicate it's not super likely, but we'll just have to see. And you know for a fact, 100%, that as soon as he is able to play and ready to go, you know Joe Pavelski will be out there. This team, in his eyes, is not going to go down unless he has something to say about it. But we also do need him to be healthy and able to play as to not endanger himself even longer than he's already been injured. So hopefully we will see the return of number 16 soon. Which doesn't seem like it's going to be tonight, or maybe even Game 3 or 4, and perhaps even the rest of the series. So it seems like Tyler Seguin is a prime candidate to plug in to the Stars top line. He's been kind of the go-to player on the Stars top line if someone has gone down. And I just have to imagine that that's going to remain the same. I'm sure the coaching staff has been racking their brains all day Tuesday. And even, when you're hearing this likely on Wednesday, we'll know a little bit more once morning skate happens and things of that nature. But Seguin is the guy who was playing alongside Robertson and Hintz for the majority of the rest of the game on Monday after Pavelski had to leave. And he's had some really good showings back when he had to sub for Rope Hintz whenever he got injured. And he really needs to find a way to reach that level again. That was some of the best hockey of the season that we saw from Tyler Seguin when he was centering that line alongside Robertson and Pavelski. But now he'll probably move to a wing position, and they'll likely look to keep Rope in that middle spot. I think he fits really well with Hintz and Robertson. I think that their games can complement each other. Seguin, not quite the exact same player as Pavelski, but just in terms of scoring ability and playmaking ability, I think Seguin fits in just well and maybe packs a little bit more speed with all the surgeries and injuries. Seguin might not be too much faster than Joe Pavelski in his late 30s, but I think that he probably moves a little bit quicker to some extent, and I think can still set up both of those guys on that line. And I think Hintz and Robertson can also find ways to set up Seguin as well, who has shown recently that he can get some of those greasy goals around the crease like we tend to see Joe Pavelski get whenever he scores in games the past few seasons here in Dallas. So that means with Seguin being moved, the lineup is once again probably going to be shifting and changing, because you'll have Seguin likely on the top line playing wing alongside Rope and Robo. Too many R's here in the Dallas Stars lineup. I imagine then you move Radek Faksa from playing the wing on the fourth line. You move him to play with Mason Marchment and Max Domi, probably putting Faksa in the middle there to play in, center of those two guys on the wing. And then you probably bring in a guy like Yoel Kiviranta to play on that fourth line. Kiviranta, of course, hadn't played in this series up to this point. He was a scratch for this game, but now the Stars obviously need to bring in another forward in order to carry a full 12 for the roster. I would imagine that that's Kiviranta. I believe Freddie Olofsson is also an option, but Kiviranta has playoff experience. Stars fans know good and well what I'm talking about when I say that. So I just have to imagine that if you're going to bring someone off the bench and off the scratch list, it's going to be number 25. He probably plays alongside Luke Glendening and Ty Dellandrea. Again, all of this that I'm saying is, in my mind, and speculating. None of this is confirmed. We will probably find out more late Wednesday morning during or after Stars morning skate to see what the line pairs will look like, and also maybe get a little bit more insight on when we could potentially see Joe Pavelski return to the ice for the team. And then, of course, you keep the Johnston line probably the exact same. There's really been two certainties with the Stars lineup this season. The top line stays the same, and Jamie Benn and Wyatt Johnston stay together. And I think with that said, I think it makes the most sense to just go ahead and keep Evgeny Dodonov alongside those guys. I don't really see them trying to put Ty Dellandrea back there, although he did spend an extended amount of time on that line with Johnston and Benn this season. I think you try to keep Dodonov there just for the sake of continuity and having some familiarity, because that line did have some really good moments in the game, especially Wyatt Johnston. I thought did not really shy away from the moment and fired quite a few shots on goal. And I'm just really curious to see how this coaching staff adjusts and looks to approach this game without Pavelski, because he does so much for the team. He can win faceoffs. He battles at the front of the net and gets those tip-ins, similar to what we saw Kirill Kaprizov do on Monday night's game when the Minnesota Wild scored their first goal on the power play in the first period. And he plays penalty kill, he plays power play. I mean, he just does so much for this team. And so it's incredibly difficult for the Stars to look to move on and try to win this series without him. But I mean, that's how the playoffs work. Guys are going to go down. You're going to suffer injuries and casualties, and you're going to have to find a way to pick yourself up, regroup, and find a way to get the win. And so whoever gets slotted into the lineup, again, I imagine it's Kiviranta. Expect him to come in, and hopefully we'll see some traces of 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs. Kiviranta would not complain if we saw some of that magic at work in this series against the Wild. And then also got to hope that Tyler Seguin can find some of his mojo playing likely alongside Jason Robertson and Rope Hintz and help keep those guys on a hot streak and maybe get on a hot streak of his own. I think it's a game changer for this Stars team if Tyler Seguin can play like the old Tyler Seguin that we all know and love. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk about some of the keys to the game, how the Dallas Stars can win Game 2 against the Minnesota Wild, and we'll start by talking about puck possession right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Buying tickets for your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you'll have. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds with Gametime. 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. You can download the Gametime app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. The NHL playoffs are here. You want to buy tickets to Game 2, or maybe the series comes back to Dallas for Game 5, Game 7. You want to buy tickets, do so with the Gametime app. Just create an account, log in, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I want to thank you again for making the Locked On Stars podcast your first listen every single day. Thank you to all the everyday listeners out there continuing to cover the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs here for the Dallas Stars. Game 2 tonight against the Minnesota Wild, and Dallas looking to get even to set the series at 1-1. Headed back to Minnesota for Game 3 and 4 over the weekend. So now the question remains, how do the Dallas Stars win? And I think there's a few different areas you can go, and we'll talk this segment about one of those answers, and then we'll talk in the next segment about the other. But I think it starts with puck possession, clean puck possession at that, because the Dallas Stars struggled to possess the puck in the first 2 periods, especially on Monday night's game. and they scored their 2 goals on the power play. It was the 5-on-5 that was giving the team trouble. They could hardly ever enter their own zone, and they really couldn't clear the defensive zone. They found themselves pinned down by Jake Ottinger's net far too often, guys wasting their whole shift in the defensive zone. They finally get possession, but then by the time they get the puck, they're having to send it in deep to the other end just to get a line change in, and unable to get any sort of rhythm or momentum generated in their own offensive zone, getting far outshot by the Wild in the early stages of the game. That would eventually flip in the third period and in the overtime periods. But early on, the Stars just looked outmatched. They were getting out forechecked, out hustled, and just flat out outworked. And Jake Ottinger was really the reason that they were still in that game after the first period. Fortunate to only have surrendered 1 goal to the Wild on the power play, because they very easily could have found themselves with 2, 3, maybe even 4 goals in that first frame if Ottinger had not been at his best, because it just felt like we were watching the Stars play defense for nearly 40 minutes, really struggling to get any sort of authority or momentum in the offensive zone. Again, unless they were drawing penalties, the power play scored those 2 power play goals, came in less than 10 seconds each. It was like magic, but then, of course, even that failed them later in the game. They finally maintained some pressure late in the game. I think the Stars were the better team in the third period, and I honestly think they were the better teams in both overtime periods. They just couldn't find a way to score. Both goalies were absolutely dialed in. Again, we talk about that final goal that did get scored. Jake Ottinger was not prepared for that play, but everything else that came Ottinger's way and everything that came Philip Gustafsson's way, they were 100% prepared for, and they read every single play like a book, unfazed, making save after save after save. But the Stars, if you go back and look at that game, they dominated offensive zone time in the third period, and especially in overtime. It felt like every chance the Minnesota Wild were getting to score in overtime was coming off of a rush opportunity or a really quick bang play. It didn't feel like the Wild were getting a ton of time to set up and make camp in the offensive zone, because the Stars were finally finding ways to shut them down, clear their own zone, navigate the neutral zone, and get in and get set up. And, of course, they also were granted a few man advantage looks in those late stages, but, again, couldn't execute despite getting some quality shots on goal. And if you want to win this game, you have to be able to do that from start to finish. I think if the Stars do some of that properly in the early goings, they probably score a little bit more earlier on in the game, and they probably score at least once, if not multiple times, on the 5-on-5. And it all really starts with who's carrying the puck in, which a lot of times, if he's out there on the ice, it's Miro Heiskanen. Miro's being asked to do a lot for the Stars this season, and even in this series, he skated 42 minutes in Monday night's game. Absolutely exhausted, I imagine. But it's got to be guys like him, and even guys like Thomas Harley. There were a few times where Thomas Harley brought the puck in and either got a shot off or helped make a play that the Stars almost scored on. It's got to be guys like that. Rope Hintz also has a pretty good knack for carrying the puck in. And I know sometimes you're going to have personnel out there on the ice that's just not their skill set. You look at the bottom six, and sometimes you have guys going on a breakaway or guys, heading down the ice with a one-on-one or a two-on-one opportunity. But then you look and it's guys like Foxa and Glendening, which that's just not their game. It's not what they do. So it's got to be the guys like Heiskanen, Harley, Hintz, and maybe even to some extent guys like Wyatt Johnston, who I think is pretty solid with the puck and keeps pretty good possession, keeps it on a stick pretty well when navigating the neutral zone, and just find a way to get set up. It worked really well when they did it, and if you keep doing it and you're able to do it all game, even a goalie as good as Philip Gustafsson or even Marc-Andre Fleury, you're eventually going to find ways to beat them and expose them, because there were several opportunities the Stars had, just could not get them to go their way. Getting that set up in the offensive zone will do absolute wonders for this Dallas Stars team. If they do it early and they do it often, I think that they will reap the benefits, and game 2 will look drastically different than game 1. And I think that they started to kind of find out how they could do it in the late stages of the game. It's just about putting together that full 60-minute or 60-plus minute performance, depending on how deep the game goes. Well, we're going to take one more quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk about how the Dallas Stars need to approach the physical side of the game and how they can handle the Minnesota Wild's shenanigans. All right, everybody, we are closing out today's episode of Locked On Stars, getting you set for game 2 of this first round series. The Stars hosting the Minnesota Wild. looking to get back even 1-1 in this series. And there's plenty of Stars fans that made the point after the game. I believe the Stars need to play a little bit meaner, a little bit tougher, and lay some big hits on some people. And I 100% agree. I feel like that's been a flaw of this team, and something that I know a lot of you have pointed out as well, y'all listening, y'all watching on YouTube, that the Stars at times are lacking that true enforcer. I mean, that's kind of what Darian Hatcher was back in the day. The Stars don't really have that. Jamie Benn certainly isn't afraid to get his hands dirty, but he's certainly no Darian Hatcher in terms of just, flat out physicality and looking to, literally rip the heads off of opposing players. Not really what Jamie Benn does, although he, again, is not afraid to get in other players' faces, although we didn't really see a ton of it in Monday night's game. And it's so odd because the game of hockey has evolved over the years. And I think even you just look at different Stars teams across the years, that just isn't this year's Dallas Stars identity, which I know a lot of you don't like that. You don't want to see that because you look back to the team that won the Stanley Cup, and they had Darian Hatcher on that team. They had guys who didn't take any kind of funny business and were not afraid to lay down those mean hits. But I think that there's a right way to play this series for the Dallas Stars if they want to win. And in my eyes, it's all about balance. And part of it is physicality, hits. And when you see a guy go down, getting up in the other guy's faces, like we saw Max Domi do. Again, Max Domi wasted zero time dropping the gloves and going after Matt Dumba after that hit on Pavelski. But you can't say that the Stars weren't playing physical on Monday night. They led the game in hits with 50. I mean, they were certainly checking hard along the boards. They were definitely throwing their bodies around the ice. They just weren't doing it to the same extent that Minnesota was doing it, and sometimes even getting away with hits that maybe shouldn't have been allowed. And the Stars also at times were doing that. We know that there was that one cross-check play on Kirill Kaprizov that probably should have been called, but didn't. The Stars are throwing their bodies around. You can't say that they aren't playing physical and they aren't matching that level of intensity, because the stat sheet will tell you otherwise, because they led the game in hits. Minnesota only had 42, 41 hits in a game where the Stars had 50. But here's the issue with that, or the way I see it. There's the side of hockey, the physical side, where you want to throw your body around, you want to wear down the other team, and that's kind of Minnesota style. That's kind of what they do. They look to get under their opponent's skins, that with guys like Matt Dumba, guys like Ryan Reeves. And if you look at the Stars roster, they just, again, don't have anyone like that. But the Stars as a team, as a roster, I think are better than the Minnesota Wild from a skill perspective. The Minnesota Wild have some good skilled players, but you look across the board, depth-wise, the Stars, one of the things they've been known for all year is when they're healthy, they have the ability to roll four lines. And I think even without Pavelski, they can still roll four very solid lines that can do a lot of damage and that can really make life difficult for opposing defenses and goaltenders. And so for the Dallas Stars to win this game, it's all about finding that balance, because I think it would be harmful if this team dedicated all of their energy to matching the antics of the Minnesota Wild. That's exactly what Minnesota wants Dallas to do. They want Dallas to play that headhunting game and focus only on going after players that are hitting our players. And again, I think that is necessary to some extent in this game. I do not want to see, I don't like seeing the Stars just getting pushed around. I would at times like to see a little bit more retaliation from the Stars. But if they waste all their time doing that, the game itself is going to get away from them. So it's all about finding that middle ground of not letting yourself get pushed around, but also still dedicating your energy to actually playing the game, winning the game with skill, with finesse. And I think that is kind of what fits the Stars the most. And who's to say that, we won't see some more, physicality tonight from the Stars. They might have just been looking to get the win in game one. And then as soon as game two starts, who knows which guy, if guys are going to go after Matt Dumba, if they go after a different player. You never really know what you're going to see, especially with guys like Jamie Benn behind the bench. Really good at just kind of hiding the emotions at times, but then just out of nowhere can snap and go after a player. But the Stars need to find a way to manage their emotions. Don't let the game get away from them, but also hold your ground, stand up for yourself. Don't let yourself get pushed around. So I hear all of you out there saying the Stars need more physicality. Would love for them to go out in the offseason and maybe get a guy like Jamie Alexiak. He was kind of that guy for us back when he was with this team. Now he's in Seattle. I think that's something that the team can look to add in the future. And I think even with some of their prospects, some of that is coming. Guys like Leon Bichelle, big domineering presence on the ice. I mean, they need that. It's necessary. Absolutely necessary. Not denying that at all, but they can't dedicate their energy to matching the antics of the opposition. They have to find that healthy middle ground of doing both. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you so much again for tuning in and making us your first listen every single day. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. We are always free and available no matter where or how you choose to listen. And you can follow us on social media as well at Locked On Stars on Instagram and Twitter, as well as my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. And of course, we'll be right back here tomorrow talking all about game 2 and reacting to everything that happens, and a game that hopefully ends with the Stars win. And hopefully we'll be talking about a tied series heading into games 3 and 4 over the weekend. But I hope you guys have a great Wednesday. Take care of yourselves. And if you're going to the game, bring the energy. The team needs it. Was watching on TV on Monday night. That building looked absolutely electric. So if you're going to the game, continue to bring that energy to the AAC and get behind the guys and watch them get the win. But I hope you guys have a great Wednesday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.